Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Joy Reid Show. Be sure to hit like and subscribe and share. Big ups to everybody listening on YouTube, Substack, Spotify, all the ships at sea. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. But yeah, make sure that you do hit that like, subscribe, and share because the algorithm needs it. But also, we want to make sure that you are counted among our number. We want to make sure that you're not lurking. 70% of people who watch things on this YouTube, watch shows on YouTube, don't subscribe. They just lurk. We don't want you to be a lurker. We want you to be family. So please do that. All right, special shouts out to the Georgia woman who called ICE on a Hyundai plant and who can't even pronounce Hyundai. But she got 450 workers, including some 300 Korean workers, detained. Her name is Tori Branham. We're going to show you a picture of her, including one of her holding a very big gun. She's a 47-year-old Marine veteran and firearms instructor and also a congressional candidate from the same state and vibe as Marjorie Taylor Greene. She bragged about calling the Trump Gestapo on that plant in a now super viral and widely mocked social media post, and here that is.
So there were 452 illegals apprehended at the Hyundai mega plant construction site yesterday near Savannah. And I was the one that reported the information that I had to ICE. But it goes beyond just someone working illegally. Let me explain to you. These people are working for slave wages. Some are not getting paid. Some are being trafficked. They send money home to their country. They give money to their handler. They have hardly anything left. They live in homes 5 families deep, have no quality of life. It's modern day slavery. So if you think that ICE is just going in and ripping people out of their jobs, these hardworking people that want a better life, well, guess what? Politicians have really screwed these people because when they came here, they thought they were, hey, the border's open, we're coming in, we're going to get the 5-star treatment, and we can go to the big Walmart, and we can live in a 5-star hotel, and that's just not how it is. It's very bad conditions, very inhumane, and the Biden administration started a humanitarian crisis. So y'all can't just look at it like they're ripping good people off the job. They're probably saving their lives in the long run.
Yeah, so I can just border. I can see them at the border being like, we just want to go to the Walmart. We're going to go to the big Walmart and live in a 5-star hotel. This is going to be amazing. We walked 3,000 miles through the Darien Gap, and now we're going to get to go to Walmart. It's going to be amazing. That's such bullshit. Brainham. Oh, Brainham. Poor honey. She says that she reported the battery plant, which is under construction still near Savannah, Georgia, to ICE several months before officials conducted the largest worksite immigration raid in department history. But unfortunately for ICE Karen, literally nothing that she said in that TikTok post is true. Nothing. The South Korean workers who were rounded up in that Trump raid were not indigent border crossers desperately paying off their coyotes and living 20 to a house as factory slaves, as she tried to hilariously portray herself as a sort of worker abolitionist. They were actually highly skilled workers who were in Georgia training Americans for good paying jobs. Quoting this PBS story, I'm going to quote, it's a long quote, I'm just going to read it to you. A lawyer for several workers detained at a Hyundai factory in Georgia say many of the South Koreans rounded up in the immigration raid are engineers and equipment installers brought in for the highly specialized work of getting an electric battery plant online. Atlanta immigration attorney Charles Kuck, who represents 4 of the detained South Korean nationals, told the Associated Press on Monday that many were doing work that is authorized under the B-1 business visitor visa program. They had planned to be in the U.S. for just a couple of weeks and never longer than 75 days, he said. The vast majority of the individuals that were detained by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement that were South Korean were either there as engineers or were involved in after-sales service and installation, Kuck said. The raid Thursday at the battery factory under construction at Hyundai's sprawling auto plant west of Savannah resulted in the detainment of 475 workers, more than 300 of them South Koreans. Some were shown being shackled with chains around their hands, ankles, and waists in video released by U.S. Customs and Immigration Enforcement. South Korea's foreign minister was flying to the U.S. on Monday to secure his citizens' return on a charter flight to South Korea, where many people have expressed confusion, shock, and a sense of betrayal. President Donald Trump said the workers were here illegally. And that instead, the U.S. needs to arrange with other countries to have their experts train U.S. citizens to do specialized work, such as battery and computer manufacturing. But immigration lawyer Kuck said no company in the U.S. makes the machines that are used in that Georgia battery plant. So they had to come from abroad to install or repair the equipment on site, work that would take about 3 to 5 years to train someone in the U.S. to do. This is not something new, Cuck said. We've been doing this forever, and we do it when we ship things abroad. We send our folks there to take care of it. We do it too. While neither government has revealed details about the workers' visas, it's not unusual for foreign companies to save time and money by sending workers from abroad to set up U.S. factories and then train U.S. workers, said Rosemary Coates, executive director of the Reshoring Institute, a nonprofit that encourages U.S. manufacturing. We saw the same thing happen in the 80s with Japanese car makers setting up U.S. factories, and in the 90s with German car makers, she said. A B1 visitor for business visa allows foreign workers to stay here for up to 6 months, getting reimbursed for expenses while collecting a paycheck back home. There are limits. For example, they can supervise construction projects, but they can't build anything themselves. But if it's spelled out in a contract, they can install equipment, according to Los Angeles immigration lawyer Angelo Paparelli. Also, South Korea is one of 41 countries whose citizens can use the U.S. electronic visa system for travel authorization. It's called ESTA, which provides a visa waiver if they can provide a legitimate reason for their visit. And this basically gives them a B1 visa status for up to 90 days, according to immigration attorney Rita Sostrin in Los Angeles. And by the way, there's now been subsequent reporting that, in fact, these workers did have those visas because they were literally training Americans to use equipment that no American knows how to do, that would take 3 to 5 years for an American to learn how to do the specialized work that they only can do in a company owned by Hyundai, which is a South Korean company. So no, ICE Karen, you did not save these workers from slavery. But you did cause an international incident and probably cost your state thousands of jobs and maybe billions of dollars. So well done. Here's how the raid was described. This is just a little bit of a description of the raid. Okay, because advocates are calling for these folks to be released, but this is what the way that they're describing it. The specialized skilled workers who were also working alongside immigrants from Mexico, Guatemala, Colombia, Chile, Ecuador, and Venezuela, who were also detained. According to an advocate for the group, the office in Savannah has now been flooded with calls from family members of workers who they cannot reach and now are presumed detained. Even some workers who were not detained feel unsafe about returning to their jobs at the site. Workers described seeing armed agents and military-style vehicles during the raid, while drones and helicopters hovered overhead. One woman who had a work permit and was not even detained told this immigration advocate, "We felt like we were being followed as animals, like they were hunting for us." And how does all this play out for the Georgia economy and the U.S. economy? Probably not well. It was just a month ago that Donald Trump and South Korea's president announced a multi-billion-dollar trade deal that was supposed to include multi-billion-dollar investments in the U.S. economy. Here is CNN's reporting from August the 24th. South Korea business heavyweights, including Korean Air and Hyundai, unveiled multi-billion-dollar deals in the United States on Monday following the summit between the two countries' leaders in Washington, D.C. At least 4 Korean conglomerates have announced deals and investment plans worth tens of billions of dollars, such as plans by the country's top airliner, Korean Air, to spend $50 billion on aircraft and engine orders from Boeing and others. South Korean businesses are expected to invest a total of $150 billion, with a B, in the U.S., according to President Lee Jae-myung's office. Lee concluded his first summit with President Donald Trump at the White House back then on Monday, which came after Seoul scrambled to secure a last-minute tariff deal to avert 25% tariffs on Korean exports in the U.S. At the time, the two sides agreed to a reduced 15% tariff rate on Korean goods and a $350 billion investment flow from Korea to the U.S., earmarked for shipbuilding, as well as spending on semiconductors, secondary batteries, biologics, and energy. It's unclear whether $150 billion worth of deals announced this week would be part of that total. Traveling alongside Lee was a bevy of business executives from some of South Korea's top conglomerates, including CEOs of Samsung Electronics, that's a Korean company, SK Group, Hyundai Motor Group, LG, do you like your TVs? That's also a Korean or a company, and Korean Air, who attended a South Korea-U.S. business roundtable after the summit. Executives from 21 American businesses, including NVIDIA, OpenAI, IBM, Google, Boeing, and General Motors, also took part in that summit. And here's my favorite part. This is the quote from that story back a month ago in August. Quote, "To create a manufacturing business renaissance where both countries can win, Let's advance our cooperations in strategic industry, including shipbuilding and nuclear and high-tech industry, including semiconductor, AI, and bio to enhance global competitiveness. More on that $50 billion deal. Korean Air said that it intended to purchase 103 aircraft from Boeing. This was a month ago, along with engines and a maintenance program from GE Aerospace and CFM International. The aircraft purchase alone includes 20 Boeing 777s, 25 Boeing 787s, 50 Boeing 737s, and 8 Boeing 777 firefighters, which will be delivered in phases. You see where I'm going with this? $5 billion. $5 billion was going to be added, and $21 billion in U.S. investment from Korea to the United States. Hyundai, a South Korean company. Kia, also Korean. Genesis, also a Korean company. They were talking about building a new steel mill in Louisiana, a state-of-the-art robotics facility in the United States. So maybe, I don't know, don't call ICE on them while they're building factories and manufacturing plants in the country that are going to employ Americans, and then sending their people to come over and train the Americans to do work that people here do not have the skills to do. Maybe don't call ICE on them, because right now Korean Americans who are living and working in Georgia are afraid to leave their homes. And once those highly skilled trainers finally get charter flights back home that are arranged by their government, it is hard to imagine them wanting to come back here. Them and the tourists who don't want to come back. And the people who don't want to send their students to come to American schools because they're going to get dragged off by ICE and thrown into a gulag. So well done, ICE Karen. You and the rest of you all, you're doing great for the American economy. Did I mention she's running for Congress? Meanwhile, overseas, Poland shot down drones from Russia, meaning World War III may be closer to being underway. Poland said that the Russian drones violated their airspace as they attacked Ukraine. So how's that ending all the wars thing going, Donald? Oh, yeah, sorry, he's too busy getting booed and called Hitler on his first trip to a D.C. restaurant in years. I want y'all to check this out. Let's start with what it looked like when Trump and his carnival cabinet, including Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, Stephen Miller, Caroline Leavitt, and J.D. Vance, got out of their official Reich wagons and made their way into Joe's Seafood, Prime Steak, and Stone Crab in Northwest D.C. Protesters from the anti-war group Code Pink were right there waiting for them. I guess those are their friends first. There you go. That can't have been fun. Okay, now here's how it played out when they actually got inside.
Yeah, happy to see you. Enjoy your dinner. Thank you.
Not every day you get called Hitler. Okay, here's an even better angle on the same thing inside.
Trump is the Hitler of our time! Free DC! Free Palestine! Trump is the Hitler of our time! Free DC! Free Palestine! Trump is the Hitler of our time! Free DC! Free Palestine! Trump is the Hitler of our time! What do you want your legacy to be?
Let's go, folks.
Time to go. He's terrorizing communities in DC.
Time to go.
He's terrorizing communities
Time to
all
go.
over the world.
Time to go.
Puerto Rico.
Let's go.
Free DC, free Palestine. Trump is the Hitler of our time.
Wow. You know what? I love this for them. I really do, honestly. Because Donald Trump is actually making the the people of DC miserable. He's making the cities, the people of Chicago miserable, New York miserable, all over the country, Los Angeles, making them miserable. And since Trump actually notoriously does not really eat out, I don't think he's ever been out to dinner in DC. That dinner experience, honestly, was a tell. Do you remember back in June of 2020 when Trump was president the first time and he was facing a very challenging re-election campaign, and he had the military during the summer of 2020 tear gas a group of peaceful Black Lives Matter protesters near the White House, including pastors, so that he could do a photo op walk to hold a Bible upside down in Lafayette Park? Remember that?
Son-in-law across Lafayette Park, the area of the nation's capital that had just moments before that been cleared with tear gas and rubber pellets where peaceful protesters had been. The president here is appearing in front of St. John's Church. It's known as the President's Church. Every president has attended services there. President Trump and his family went to a service on Inauguration Day at St. John's Church, and it sustained a fire overnight. The president's former director of national intelligence and ambassador to Germany tweeted that this is a moment of hope triumphing over fear. But intended or not, Andrew, this does send another message that the president is willing to do whatever is within his power to vacate premises as needed. Here he is returning to the White House in a pretty remarkable image, flanked on either side by law enforcement, followed by his staff after that visit to St. John's Church across the park.
And remember, General Mark Milley apologized for being part of that really creepy fascist walk to that cleared out Lafayette Park. And I'll remind you, there were pastors who were also tear gassed to remove them and remove their protests so that Donald Trump could do that upside down Bible hold, if purely for a photo op. And Trump back then had no problem using the United States military and police, federalized police, to cushion a 40-foot walk from the White House because he knew how much people hated him for all the COVID deaths and for his rooting for the police who killed unarmed Black people. So he's afraid to walk within a few feet of the safety of the White House without literally having a military deployment go ahead of him, which sure makes it look like what he's doing now, using the military and his secret police to put Washington, D.C. under military armed occupation, is at least in part so that he doesn't have to be afraid all the time. I mean, after all, this is the president who hid in the White House basement in a bunker in May of 2020 when a Black Lives Matter protest was taking place in Lafayette Park because he was terrified then, too, scared to come out of the White House. So now he's using the National Guard to make D.C. feel safe and pretty for him. He's making National Guardsmen pick up the trash and clean the streets for him. If he didn't hate dogs, I'll bet he'd make them walk the dog for him, like his pal Rudy Giuliani did with the NYPD when they had to walk his girlfriend's dog. The only way that Trump feels safe going out to eat like a normal person is under literal martial law. He knows that that is how hated he is. Meanwhile, here is what President Obama's life outside of the velvet White House ropes looked like.
Well, who are you guys? Who are you guys?
We are from Oyster. Adam's
Oyster?
bilingual. Your wife is in it. She's the president of Mexico.
Is that right? So what are you guys doing here today?
What are we doing? Tell them.
Bowling.
Yeah.
You went bowling?
Yeah.
You used my bowling alley?
We had permission.
Are you sure?
Yeah, we had permission.
Did you guys roll some strikes?
Yep.
Did you use the bumpers?
Yep.
You guys are being very quiet and very well
I
behaved.
think they're a little overwhelmed.
You know what? Let's get a little rowdy here. Come on. First of all, I want a high five from everybody. Come on. High five. We'll give the president a high five. High five. Give me high fives.
May I take a picture?
Of course, we're going to pose for a picture.
Yes, the good old days when our president wasn't a Timu Hitler leading the nation down the path to fascism with the help of his party and the Supreme Court, which this week ratified the use of racial profiling against anyone with an accent or skin color that Trump's armed ICE Gestapo might be suspicious of. Now, they're essentially turning the United States into a version of pre-1990 South Africa, where any Black person or Black person at the time could have their papers demanded by authorities simply for being outside. Now, those same rules apply to brown and Black people in America, and of course, Korean Americans and Korean immigrants who are here to literally train Americans for jobs working for Korean conglomerates who are creating jobs in the American South. We now live in a reality that the majority on our Supreme Court are Christian nationalists, monarchists, and supporters effectively of apartheid. But they also pretend to be model Christians, creating not just white nationalism, but white Christian nationalism. But apparently the kind that leaves out the whole love and care for the immigrant and the poor bit. A new book by my friend John Fugelsang, and I have it here, right here, tackles that very subject. In Separation of Church and Hate, John writes the following. If you watched American TV news in the late 20th century, you received a steady diet of Jerry Falwell, Pat Robertson, and all manner of ex-segregationists and blow-dried televangelists, all ranting about welfare queens, feminists, and AIDS patients. These right-wing Christian media stars preach the virtue of forcing poor pregnant women to give birth against their will, that they might experience substantially greater poverty and greater risk to their health. They warned us that any government programs that actually helped the poor were communist. They expressed outrage at protests against racism while never denouncing actual racism. They always punched down, always attacking the poor, the addicts, the migrants, and the migrants at the border. And a gay minority, they assumed, they assured me the Bible condemned somewhere. Millions of American Christians were media-fed this version of Christianity, white supremacist, pro-apartheid, anti-labor, zero teachings of Jesus, offering only condemnation and propaganda, always seeking more power and always needing more cash. And joining me now is the man who wrote those words, the great John Fugelsang, radio host, comedian, brilliant writer, and the author of this really great book. John, thanks for being here.
Joy, thank you so much for having me. Can I just, before we even talk about my stuff, say how much I love the show? You and your team are doing such a great public service at a time when so many people are looking for leadership. You are doing it and just wailing on new media. And I look forward to your clips every day. My thanks to your team. I don't know how you guys put this together. It's just great. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, it's just Jesus.
Oh, yeah, I know.
It's just Jesus. I was fascinated reading your book. I really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
I loved learning more about you and your parents. You shouldn't even be here. I mean, your
I'm not
parents were
supposed to
going
be.
to be a priest, right? Like they were
Yeah.
supposed to be a nun and a priest. Talk a little bit about that. I want to get into what you wrote about, because I grew up in the 80s as well and experienced the world the way you did with these evangelicals, like preaching at us through the TV, but all of the values were upside down. Talk about the values you got, though, from your mom and dad.
Well, thank you. Yeah, my mom grew up in the segregated South, went into the convent right out of high school. They put her through nursing school and sent her off to work with lepers in the jungles of Malawi. My mom went from segregated Virginia to the African jungle. My father was a Franciscan brother teaching history to Catholic boys in Brooklyn. Big social justice Catholic. His holy trinity was MLK, Gandhi, and Dorothy Day, founder of Catholic Charities. My dad fell madly in love with this nurse nun that took care of him in Brooklyn, carried a torch for 10 years, finally got her to quit and go on a date. And they tried to raise us, Joy, to be progressive, free-thinking, liberal Catholics who were still sexually oppressed. And it's why I went into stand-up comedy, because I couldn't afford the therapy I required. But I was raised, like so many, believing that Christianity was about the stuff Jesus talked about, taught, and commanded. Care for the less fortunate. Forgive your enemies. Matthew 25, Jesus gives his prescription for what a Christian nation needs. He says he will gather the individuals and the nations at the end of the world, and both individuals and nations, and divide them into the goats and sheep. And the ones who go to heaven are the ones who took care of the poor, took care of the sick, welcomed the stranger, and were kind to those in prison. Nothing about how loud you screamed at women outside health clinics. Nothing about how many trans kids or migrants you persecuted. I mean, Jesus said, it's like his memo to the Heritage Foundation. Those 4 things. And that's why the Christian right will never put a Jesus quote on a classroom wall or a men's room wall. I'm sorry, or a courthouse wall. Men's room wall, they'll put Larry Craig's phone number. In this case, I grew up thinking it was about love. And then, as you said, I grew up seeing these Pat Robertsons and Jerry Falwells selling this version of Christianity that was nothing like the Jesus teachings, and I was embarrassed to be told I was part of. Abortion was how they took over. They got the followers of Jesus to vote against everything Jesus ever talked about by talking about abortion, which Jesus never talked about. And that led to 2 generations of Christians groomed to not even know what this man actually commanded, but they don't need to follow him because they worship him really loudly and piously. And I got tired of seeing my parents' religion used as cover for meanness. And I wrote this book for believers of any faith or any atheist on all the right-wing arguments they use about the Bible and why they're all completely rubbish and anti-Jesus. Even if you're an atheist, if you're fighting a Christian nationalist, chances are Jesus is on your side.
Right. I mean, the reality is that there was no greater fighter against religion running the government than Jesus. I mean, he was not going against the scribes and the Pharisees, saying they needed to do better running the government. He was like, these people are corrupt. I'm flipping your tables. You can't have all this money, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there was no way in which he ever collaborated with the government. That there should be no relationship between religion and the government for that reason. I want to talk a little bit about the abortion piece because you're right.
Please.
That is the way that they came in. But originally in 1973, when, in the first 6 or 7 months after the Roe decision, the church had nothing to say about abortion. The church really didn't weigh in on abortion in
That's
general.
right.
It wasn't something they cared about at all
Oh, yeah.
until a political strategist said, hey, we should probably do this instead of fighting to maintain segregation.
I mean, it took a long while, right? Like when I first met Jerry Falwell, Joy, I was in my 20s. I debated him on Bill Maher. I didn't know he had been a segregationist who opened up whites-only schools. The news never told me. The news just told me he was a Christian leader. And in the 70s, these guys were reeling from losing on civil rights, losing on voting rights, Nixon's resignation. They were lost in the wilderness. And you're right. The most controversial thing about Roe v. Wade was how not controversial it was. The Southern Baptists voted to affirm abortion rights a year after. That was a Catholic thing, they said. Falwell never mentioned abortion until 5 years after Roe v. Wade. Their big issue back then was the fact that Jimmy Carter was trying to take tax-exempt status away from colleges and universities that were still practicing racial segregation in the 70s. If you look at Reagan's campaign speeches in 1980, he mentions Jimmy Carter's IRS with more outrage than abortion. They were still fighting for segregation back then. But after Reagan was sworn in, they realized this was the issue that was going to work. Reagan, who had signed the most liberal abortion law in California history, became staunchly anti-abortion. George H.W. Bush Sr. overnight went from supporting women's reproductive freedoms to the next day, big pro-life, to be Reagan's running mate. It has destroyed our politics and it destroyed our Christianity since then. And abortion and criminalizing it has nothing to do with the teachings of Jesus. Government forcing citizens to be pregnant against their will. Not in the Bible. God asserts a fetus is property in Exodus and that a woman's life has more value in his eye. Exodus chapter 21. Abortions are legal and free in Israel right now because Jesus' religion never banned them. And most right-wing Christians still don't know this. Jesus opposed the death penalty, never against abortion. These guys don't even know what they're fighting for. And it's ridiculous that Democrats have ceded the Bible over to these frauds.
Yeah, 100%. And the reason that you're so dangerous to them is that you actually know the Bible. And I think that is what they really fear is actual people who actually know the Bible and can quote it back to them because they've never read it for the most part, right?
No.
They use the Bible for their own use. I have to talk about immigration really quickly.
Please.
Because it is the biggest thing. Let me play for you really quickly. This is Tom Homan, who purports to be a Bible-believing, church-going Catholic. Here he is arguing with Mika Brzezinski about whether or not it is okay for ICE to be disappearing people.
I've done this show several times. Every time on your show, I speak with integrity, I speak with honesty, and I speak with facts. The bottom line is, because of all this false narrative, and you using the term disappearing people,
well,
is
that's
disgusting.
What's happened. That happened to the group that was sent to El Salvador. U.S. citizens get arrested every day. U.S. citizens get arrested by police every day. Are they being disappeared? No, their laws are being enforced. They're being arrested. They're being put in detention because they committed a criminal offense. Not like what you're doing.
Not even close. We're enforcing the law and arresting people here in violation of law that are public safety threats. That's not disappearing people. That's enforcing the laws of this country and making this country safer.
I thank you very much for explaining what ICE considers to be a danger and a criminal threat. Everybody understands the reality, and we appreciate your sharing that reality with us. And we would love the data. Borders.
That guy.
That guy. I mean, that guy was hired by Obama, John.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to become the ogre of Trump 2.0.
Yeah. And again, we could just take the secular angle on this and say that it's all a fraud. If they wanted border crossings to stop, they'd go after the employers who do all the hiring. They'll arrest everybody in the meatpacking plants, but never the two guys in the back room counting the money. That's how you know it's a scam. They won't go after the people putting up the help wanted sign at our border. Trump's protecting the agricultural workers, but on a spiritual level, it's especially evil. And one of the things I wanted to do with this book was to say, you don't have to argue with Christian nationalists. Make them argue with God. Make them argue with Jesus. Because the God of the Old Testament is unambiguous. He commands us to welcome the stranger, commands the Israelites to treat the alien as one of your own. Jesus shows up, and as I said in Matthew 25, goes a step further and says, individuals and nations will be judged by how they welcome the stranger. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't have standards on who comes into the country, of course. It's the criminalization of migrants and legal asylum seekers where the racist part comes in. We got 50,000 undocumented Irish in this country. There's no talk about how we're going to get them out. I live on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. You know how many Russians we got? No talk about them. It's only about the brown people. It's everything Joe Arpaio did. But when you're debating with your right-wing uncle about this, go to the Old Testament and the New Testament. I had this debate with our pal Scott Jennings on the other place a couple of weeks ago. And I'm like, God demands it. Jesus demands it. So please explain to everybody, tell me, why should I listen to you and Donald Trump and reject God and Jesus? We don't have to fight these people. If you know the scripture, if you know one or two facts on each issue, make your racist uncle debate God.
Amen, amen, amen. I wish we had more time. John Fugelsang,
No worries.
please come back. The book
Anytime.
is called The Separation of Church and Hate. It is so good, y'all. I read it. And he's going to make you laugh while he's teaching you. Whether or not you're a religious person, whether you're a secular person, an atheist, it doesn't matter. You need to read this book because you're going to understand what we're fighting and how to fight it. John, thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you, Joy. Peace.
Thank you. All right, y'all, this seems like an excellent time to note that standing up for religious freedom is not just a matter of good manners. It is a matter of saving our democracy from literal fascism, which is why I am so proud to say that the Joy Reid Show is brought to you by the Freedom from Religion Foundation. And here's some good news. We love good news for those of us who believe in the First Amendment. The Freedom from Religion Foundation just helped stop two big pushes to inject religion into our public schools. In Texas, a federal judge blocked a law that would have required the 10 Commandments to be hung up in every single public classroom. And in Arkansas, after another FFRF lawsuit, a judge ordered Conway schools to immediately remove their 10 Commandments posters. These rulings remind us that public schools are for all children, regardless of their faith or lack thereof. That wall between church and state, that thing, it is holding strong thanks to advocates who are fighting to keep our public institutions free and fair and for everyone. So go to ffrf.us/school to support and text my first name, Joy, to 511-511 to stand up for real freedom. Just text Joy to 511-511. Because here's the thing. Once you let religion make the rules in schools, it's only a matter of time before they're making the rules for everyone, everywhere. Go to ffrf.us/school or text Joy to 511-511, and message and data rates may apply. Okay, so back to business. We now have the actual, really super creepy book that a bunch of Jeffrey Epstein's friends sent to him for his 50th birthday back in 2003, 3 years before his sex crimes became public. And we now have an actual picture of the Trump entry in that book. I'm going to show it to you here. It's pretty gross. It's just as described by the Wall Street Journal. Now, of course, Trump is still insisting that that photo is a fake, that he never signed any letter, that the whole thing is a Democratic fraud. And here's his spokeswoman doing that. Now, Trump saying that it's a fake, and of course, he's suing.
About the Epstein case, would the White House support a professional handwriting expert review of the document released yesterday to prove that it's not the president's signature?
Sure, we would support that. And in fact, I have already seen many forensic analysts of signatures coming out. I believe it was the Daily Signal that published a piece with 3 separate signature analysts who said that this absolutely was not the president's authentic signature. And we have maintained that position all along. The president did not write this letter. He did not sign this letter. And that's why the president's external legal team is aggressively pursuing litigation against the Wall Street Journal, and they will continue to. Christian.
Yeah, of course. Trump is suing Rupert Murdoch and friends and Rupert Murdoch's company over their story breaking the news about this letter. Trump's even gotten some of his most ridiculous Republican lackeys to lie about the signature on the letter and say it isn't his. Here are some of them doing that. This is B3.
From what I see, it's not a signature. I've seen Donald Trump sign a million things.
This doesn't look like his signature to you?
Nope. Doesn't look like it. I've watched him sign nonstop.
Well, I don't know. I mean, anybody can do a signature. We've seen the auto pen's been used quite a bit with the Biden administration. So I've never known Trump to be much of an artist either. So I'd kind of draw that into question.
Do you think it's his? I highly doubt that it is. I don't think that if that is true and he did sign that letter, I don't know that there's anything there.
Yeah, I don't know that there was an auto. I don't know that there was an auto pen back in 2003, buddy. And here's the other problem: the letter was like literally handed over to Congress by the Epstein estate. So if the signature isn't real, how did the estate get that letter? Who faked the signature? There's no auto pen back then. Was it the Epstein estate that supposedly faked the signature? How would they even do that? And why are Republicans pretending that they don't see what we can all see? Here's Republican Congressman Thomas Massie giving his theory.
Congress who might think about co-sponsoring this, they're getting calls from the political machine that Donald Trump runs. We've got members of Congress who have aspirations of running for statewide office, and they can't win a statewide office in a Republican primary with Donald Trump on the other side. So they're terrified of him. With three big exceptions, three women have co-sponsored this resolution: Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and Nancy
Why
Mace.
aren't they terrified of President
I
Trump?
think, number one, because they're women, they feel obligated to take up for the women who've been abused.
And joining me now is the Democratic congressman who teamed up with Representative Massie to get those files out there, Congressman Ro Khanna of California. Congressman, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much. What do you think of Thomas Massie's theory as to why those three women, Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, are the only Republicans besides him who are willing to join with you and all of these other Democrats, really all the Democrats, in saying that the Epstein files should come out?
They see it as a human issue. Frankly, they've shown courage. I mean, Nancy Mace was in tears after she heard the testimonials of the survivors. She is a survivor herself, and if you view the video, she literally broke down. It was that harrowing. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, gave me a hug after we were at the same press conference. I mean, you can't hear these women talk about being raped and abused at 13, 14, have a heart and not be moved. And I think Lauren Boebert, again, has a human reaction. And it's just sad to me that the others are viewing this as politics. I mean, it was Trump that said, let's release the files. We've now had the survivors basically share their stories. There's not a single Republican, including the Speaker or Jim Comer, who thinks that these women aren't telling the truth. And so why aren't they speaking up when Donald Trump is saying it's a hoax? Why don't they just call for standing with these survivors?
Congressman Massie, the other thing he said, that there's a billionaire in the state of Kentucky, in his state, that is now funding primary runs against him. That essentially he's now up against a billionaire who is likely in that book, or who is in the Epstein files. Is that the issue here? Is that this is an attempt by Republicans to protect a lot of very, very wealthy men who are actually connected potentially to this scandal?
Yes, there are rich and powerful men who have not had consequence, who have impunity. And some of them now may be funding the opposition to Thomas Massie. But the broader issue is, what force is so powerful that they're preventing Donald Trump from releasing these files? Why is it that rich and powerful men who basically said that they could abuse underage girls if they knew the right politician aren't being held accountable? That's what the whole country is asking. And, when Thomas Massie and I took this, we knew we were going to get attacked. He's, of course, knew he would possibly face a primary. The White House press secretary is attacking me. The Trump White House is attacking me. powerful donors don't like it. Some people in our own party said, "Oh, Ro, be careful. You don't want to get too far out there." But the American people have had it with this kind of impunity.
Let's talk about some of the content. Well, you want to tell me who some of these Democrats are that told you to back off?
They're all on board now. So
Oh,
I am. Let's move forward and let's make sure that we don't lose a single Democratic vote.
okay. Let's talk about some of the contents of this book. There's obviously the Trump signed, woman sort of outline of a woman with a pretty weird cryptic poem in it. But I want to show you. This is B5, Jason. This is to me one of the creepiest, if not the creepiest thing in this book. And as you can see, I don't know if you can see the screen, but there is a photo. There was an image or a drawing, and it says 1983, and it shows what I guess is Jeffrey Epstein handing balloons to a group of children, and then it says 2003, three barely dressed women giving what appears to be Epstein a massage on a massage table, and one of them is clearly rubbing his genitals. It's hard for me to believe that the people who wrote these very strange missives to him on his 50th birthday did not know what his predilections are. You can just go through them. Let's show B6, the other one. They all look to me like people knew that he was a sexual predator. That's the Lolita Express that's shown in there. Let's look at B7. These appear to be people who knew exactly who and what Jeffrey Epstein was, and they thought it was funny. Do you believe that everyone who signed that book, or at least most of them, knew what Jeffrey Epstein was doing?
Joy, that is such an important point that you're making. Yes, most of them, I believe, knew. And there are two cover-ups here. There's the cover-up of powerful and rich people who turned a blind eye and kind of chuckled, knowing what Jeffrey Epstein was doing and why they didn't speak up. That needs accountability. And then there's the question of people who participated in this, because we know from the survivors that they were farmed out to other rich and powerful people. But I think the reason this has struck such a nerve is it's a mirror of what our society is like and was like, and that there was a culture that rich and powerful men had of impunity, that they could kind of treat young women as their playthings, as discardable objects, and they would basically suffer no consequence because they knew the right people. And this is being exposed, and it's horrifying to the American people. It says what's happened to our culture, what's happened to our sense of values, and that's why this is not going away. It is really a mirror to our society, and people are saying no. Rich and powerful men need to be held accountable.
A couple of things on that. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, said to camera that Donald Trump was an FBI informant who turned Jeffrey Epstein in. He then tried to walk that back. You are on the inside of trying to investigate this as a member of Congress. Do you have any evidence that Donald Trump was an FBI informant and that he's the one who turned Epstein into the FBI?
I do not, but the way to resolve this once and for all is to release the files. That's what we're asking. We want the witness interviews to be released. We want the memorandum to be released. And if there was a file saying that an interview took place with Donald Trump and here's what Donald Trump said, then put that out there. And that's what really Massie and I find so hard to understand, which is what is being hidden here. Obviously, Donald Trump knew when he was campaigning that he was fine with the files being released. Vance was fine with the files being released. Something changed where Pam Bondi says, let's just sweep this under the rug. What is this force? Who are they trying to protect? Are there foreign governments involved? Are there foreign leaders involved? Are they just rich billionaire donors involved? And if there's nothing to it, if Trump's saying, "Oh, it's just a hoax," which is demeaning to the women survivors. But if there's nothing to it, then why doesn't he just release it and get it over with, and show people that there's nothing there?
And can you confirm that that Congress, that your committees received that birthday book from the Epstein estate?
We have, and people say a forensic analysis to make sure it's Trump's signature. Well, that's for Jim Comer was the chair of the committee to do. I know Robert Garcia, if you were the chair of the committee, would order that kind of investigation. But Comer said, "Oh, we don't need to do it. I don't want to waste my time with something 20 years back." Well, you can say we want an investigation, and then your own Republican chair is saying don't do an investigation. But
Right.
the point is, this is not anti-Trump. The point is, if they're not telling the truth about that, then how can we trust them to tell the truth about anything else in the files?
Yeah, they seem quite interested in going into the past when it came to Hunter Biden. Let's talk about some of these potential guilty people that are being protected. Let's talk about the foreign governments. Israel's former Prime Minister Ehud Barak is implicated by some of these victims. It appears that Jeffrey Epstein at least knew Benjamin Netanyahu. He seemed to have a lot of friends who were big boosters of the Israeli state. Is one of the foreign governments that you want to see investigated for whether they are maybe leveraging what their intelligence services may know about some of the people who were involved with Epstein? Is Israel one of the countries you think might be leveraging that information or protecting people who are citizens of that country? And I ask you that knowing that a pedophile was released by the Trump administration to allow to go back to Israel.
Look, I don't want to speculate on which countries. I'll just tell you what I know in terms of the facts, and that is that Bradley Edwards has said that we need to get the files from the CIA. Bradley Edwards is the victim's attorney. Bradley Edwards has seen these files. Now, why would you want files from the CIA and from other agencies involved with foreign governments? It's because there is some foreign government angle to this. There is concern, from what I've been told, of, at the very least, money laundering, that there was an operation to launder money with Epstein. There is concern about the financial transactions. There's concern about what the motive was. So I think for someone like me who is in a position to try to get the files, it would be irresponsible to prejudge anything other than to say there are very deep and disturbing questions. And that's why the transparency here is so important. And that's why the American people want answers.
Are you concerned that foreign governments may be using what they might know about who was involved with Jeffrey Epstein, either in the sexual predilections, the sexual crimes, or in financial crimes? Are you concerned that foreign governments could be leveraging that against Donald Trump or other people or other U.S. citizens?
I'm concerned what's out there and what other countries know, if they do know things, and whether they are using that. I mean, this is why the only answer here, Joy, and keep coming back to this, is transparency. Let's get this out to the American public. Let them make the determination. And people say, well, reputations are going to be ruined. I think the American people are perfectly capable of making a distinction between someone who met Jeffrey Epstein because they got money from them for some scholarship or cancer research, or someone who happened to be at a party but didn't engage in illegal conduct, and those who either engaged in illegal conduct or a cover-up. The American people have a fairness and a common sense. What they don't accept is that we just sweep this whole thing under the rug like we have for the past decades, that the victims get no justice, and that we just pretend that if you're rich and powerful, you get to do whatever you want in America.
Do you have any evidence that or do you have anything, I should say, that can help us understand how Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and others who were very vocal about releasing the Epstein files during the campaign seem to have changed their minds? Kash Patel said that the FBI director is the person who could release the files. He is now the FBI director. Dan Bongino was very clear as a podcaster that these files should be released, and now they've all gone offside.
No, we don't. And that's what we find perplexing. What is the motive? Why are these files not being released? We know the files exist because we know that from the victims' lawyers. They've seen the files. When people say, how will you know if they release the files that they don't scrub them? Well, we'll talk to the victim's lawyer. There are people in this country who have seen these files, and there are a lot of career officials who've seen these files. So why aren't we releasing them? And they have not given a good answer. They just say, well, there's nothing to see. It's all a hoax. Well, then, if there's nothing to see, release all the files, release the witness interviews, release the financial transactions. Let the American public decide it. And I still have not gotten a good answer from them about why they don't do this, if there's no there. And that's really what has angered people, and people are asking, what is this force that's more powerful than our government in preventing the disclosure?
Two more quick questions. One question being, there was a pretty blockbuster New York Times in-depth piece about the ways in which Jeffrey Epstein was deeply involved in our financial system and in the collapse of our financial system in 2008. JP Morgan was named. He was apparently getting high profile, high net worth clients for them so that they and Bear Stearns and other companies continued doing business with him even after they knew what he was. Would you like to see the leadership of those big banks brought in and forced to also testify?
Yes, that we need to follow the money. And there was a lot of financial transactions that took place that raised a lot of red flags. One, were they protecting Epstein? And did they know that he was engaged in this kind of sex trafficking scheme? And were they just indifferent to it and said, okay, we're going to turn a blind eye? Well, we need to know that, and there needs to be accountability. And two, where was this money for Epstein coming from? Was it illegal money? What was the motive? We need both the files released and testimony.
Do you believe that, just from your own analysis of it and what you've been able to see on the inside, do you believe that Jeffrey Epstein died by suicide, or do you believe that he was murdered, as his brother believes?
I have no idea in terms of making a conclusion on that. And one of the things I've done is just stick to the facts, not engage in anything that could be seen as speculation,
Yeah.
and made it clear this is not even against Donald Trump or his administration. This is about the survivors. This is about our children. This is about taking on a culture that has obviously degraded women. And I'm hopeful. We have 217 signatures today, Joy. We need one more. We're going to get that on September 23rd by a new Democrat House. But I'm hoping between now and September 23rd, if there's maybe the survivors can teach us as a country how we come together. That's what they're asking. That is there no principle so sacred that a country can come together? How about standing up for young girls not being abused? And I hope that there's a single more Republican who finds some courage to say, yeah, I'm going to stand with Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Thomas Massie, and Nancy Mace, and I'm going to stand on principle in this issue. Let's see.
How sad. I'm going to let you go, but one very quick question. Do you expect Ghislaine Maxwell to be pardoned?
I did, and now I'm hoping that not, because I think the survivors were so powerful that how that would make them just relive the trauma and be a total slap in their face. I do think they broke through there, and my hope is that stops the pardon in its tracks. It's still a possibility, but I think that press conference moved the needle on that.
Well, thank you very much, Congressman Ro Khanna. I appreciate all the work that you've done for the survivors. Appreciate you, survivors nationwide. I think appreciate you and Summer Lee and Thomas Massie, I have to say. And what a strange world when the voices of reason and clarity and moral clarity on the right are Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and Nancy Mace. But this is where we are. Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Joy. Thank you for your moral clarity, and thank you for your moral clarity on Gaza as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Take
Same
care.
to you. All right. And speaking of Gaza and Israel, this week Israel launched yet another military attack outside of its own borders, this time directly striking Qatar, where negotiators had gathered to striking in the Middle East, where negotiators had gathered to try to hammer out yet another attempt at a ceasefire deal in Gaza. It's a reminder that Trump, who's been the one pushing for these negotiations, essentially sending those negotiations to where they were then targeted by their supposed negotiation partners. And joining me now to discuss is Israeli-Palestinian journalist Rula Jebreal.
Good to see you.
Hello, my friend. Let's talk about this. I mean, Israel has now made it a habit of striking outside its borders on a very regular basis. But in this case, the people who were struck were supposed to be negotiating a peace deal. What is going on?
Well, Israel in the last 2 months struck multiple sovereign states: Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, the West Bank, Gaza, and Tunisia, by the way, which the media is not talking about, and now Qatar. This is the consequence of impunity. And the whole idea that they were interested in a peace deal or a negotiation or end of the war, or even to liberate the remaining hostages, they're not interested in any of that. This undermine and underscore one thing. We're dealing with an unhinged state and government that believe themselves to be above any law. They don't believe in any law. And now they feel so emboldened, they're willing to use negotiation as a ruse to decapitate the leadership whom they claim to be negotiating with in a country that hosts the biggest military base for the United States. Absolutely unhinged. But also, this is an act of terrorism, exactly like the Badger attack and any other attack. But this could not happen of the United States, directly and indirectly. Joy, we need to say this clearly. The United States government is colonized by Israel. It was never about America first. The real priority is to continue to arm Israel, finance Israel, and to continue to accept whatever is doing, regardless whether it's undermining America's national security. But what they did yesterday is putting on America's back a target. I fear what will happen because you and I covered the Iraq war. We remember very well the rise and spike of terrorism. And nobody's talking about this. 2 years of genocide in Gaza, bombing left and right in the Middle East. Then you have a U.S. envoy, Barak, in Lebanon saying, Israel will do whatever they want. They will go whatever they want. They will bomb whoever they want. That was 2 weeks ago. And say they don't believe anymore in the borders. They don't believe in any borders that were established post-World War II. They are now in a free zone. They are willing to do whatever. When you have an American administration through their envoys and through their ambassador to Israel saying they believe in a holy war, then we are in an uncharted territories. And I fear for American safeties, and I fear for America's national security. And I think we need to remember what Barack Obama said after the Iraq war, when he said, ISIS is the byproduct, it's the outgrowth of Al-Qaeda, which is the outgrowth of our invasion of Iraq. He added saying, we need to think before we shoot. They're shooting only. The only agenda is kill, kill, kill.
I want to talk about, because Qatar is a very special case, right? I mean, during the first Trump administration, Trump attempted to punish Qatar because they didn't feel that they were being compliant enough with the desires of the then Trump regime, which was essentially being run by Jared Kushner. And when they decided they weren't compliant enough, they attempted to cut them off. Then they brought them back into the fold. The relationship has gotten so, it's gone such a 180 that Qatar gave Donald Trump a supposedly free luxury plane. Gave him this free jet that is going to now cost the American people $900 million to upgrade so that he can use it for his personal use or as his pretend Air Force One. We, as you said, have military bases in Qatar. We have American troops that are stationed in Qatar. What is the Qatari government saying now that their supposed ostensive ally has allowed war to be made against them by Israel? What are they saying?
Well, in my contact with the Qataris, they are horrified, abhorred, but also there's a lesson. When the Speaker of the Parliament tweeted that tweet saying, well, it's basically what he was saying about the bombing in Qatar. This is a message to everybody in the Middle East. They heard the message, and the message that even if you give, Donald Trump bribes indirectly and directly, even if you invest in golf courses, because they were negotiating. I think Don Jr. was in Qatar just a week ago or 10 days ago, negotiating for a new golf course, Trump golf course in Qatar. Jared Kushner received from the Qataris billions of dollars, by the way, in his investment. Other people who were part of the Trump administration, Mnuchin, received from the Qataris tons of billions. So that money cannot buy you safety and security, will not guarantee the umbrella of security. Having a military base in your territory will not guarantee your security. Being a good ally to the United States, negotiating not only with Hamas on behalf of the United States, but also with the Taliban. But not only that, when the Armenia, when Trump wanted supposedly to make peace between Azerbaijan and Armenia, the Qataris negotiated for them. The Qataris negotiate also indirectly with Putin. So they've been negotiating and mediating for a long time. That's their brand. Mediation, negotiation, reconciliation. And that brand is being butchered because America allowed Israel to feel so emboldened. That unconditional support is now got to their head where they think they can do whatever they want. And regardless, they own the United States. The United States Congress in their pocket. The presidency is in their pocket. America first was a lie. It's Israel first. Any Israeli get free healthcare, free education. They don't even have to work, free homes. And who's paying and bankrolling all of that? Your taxpayer money. my taxpayer money, the American taxpayer money. People are homeless in the US. People have huge crises. They're indebted. But the money for Israel is always there. We need to understand that without that unconditional support, Israel will not be allowed to do that. In the 80s, Joy, you and I talked about Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, a Republican president, picked the phone call and called the Israelis when they were bombing to oblivion Beirut and said, stop the Holocaust. And within 20 minutes, there was a ceasefire and a withdrawal from Beirut. Donald Trump, who pretend like he is, if he was president, October 7 would never happen. If he was president, he's going to solve all of that. Well, you are president now. How much compromata and compromise material, and the one piece about the Epstein Files that we never discussed, was he an Israeli asset? What did he provide to the Israeli government? These are all open questions. And with all due respect to all the politicians who are running about thinking this is a ring that was somehow only an American story, this is a global story, an international story, and it's tied directly to Israel and to the Israeli government.
And I think that was going to be my next question, because we were just talking with Congressman Ro Khanna about the Epstein Files and Donald Trump seeming sort of mania to keep them secret, to keep them hidden. And then I go through and I look at all of these rules that are being put in place very deliberately that are not even about the United States, right?
Yes.
That protests must be shut down. This Project Esther, saying that all protests in favor of Palestinians must be shut down at universities, ousting the president of Harvard, really over what they're claiming was anti-Semitism, but really just protests by students against apartheid and genocide in Gaza.
Yes.
CBS now putting Bari Weiss in charge of the newsroom, and saying explicitly that one of the reasons for many of the changes is that they were upset that Ta-Nehisi Coates was effectively called a terrorist on the CBS morning show. And because journalists internally were horrified by that, they want no more of that kind of horror to make its way into policy, that no one is allowed to say anything if someone like Ta-Nehisi Coates is slandered. That is now being brought into all of the changes Skydance is making. It is very odd to me that there seems to be a real kind of attempt to almost whack-a-mole any even emotions that people have about the genocide that's happening in Gaza, and to make it illegal to feel anything about it. And at the same time, I note again, and I don't think American media is covering it enough, a member of Israel's intelligence apparatus was accused of attempting to meet up with a child for
Yes.
sexual purposes, and then was sent back to Israel without a second thought. It feels like there is a lot of protecting this government, and I don't know why that is. Do you have a sense of why that is?
Let me comment one piece by piece. So the Bari Weiss piece that should concern everybody that cares about freedom of expression, freedom of speech. So basically, pro-Israel billionaires are giving a pro-Israeli propagandist who denied the genocide, Bari Weiss, dedicated her entire life to get firing from Columbia University, Palestinian and Arab and Muslim professor. They're giving her money in the guise of basically a business acquisition. They're trying to, buy her things and then put her in CBS so her new role will be the news censor, to censor people like you and me and Ta-Nehisi Coates and Noura Erakat and any Palestinian dissenting voice. They want total regime change. And I'm using this word deliberately because they want to dominate the narrative. They know they lost the war of the propaganda war. Israel has been paying Google, YouTube, and others millions of dollars, basically to repeat genocide denial, that there's no famine in Gaza, even after the United Nations, a human rights organization. And the Trump administration and Marco Rubio is now sanctioning any human rights organization, Palestinian or otherwise, that is cooperating with the International Criminal Court, that is collecting war crime evidence. Human rights organization, they started with the Palestinian ones, Al-Haq, Al-Mazan, and others. They basically targeting them financially to crippling them. They're targeting also reporters for the United Nations, the head of the ICC. And this is the incredible part. The head of the ICC, Karim Khan, was not only threatened, The former head of the ICC, Bensouda, was threatened by the Israeli head of Mossad, Yossi Cohen, who told her, I don't want anything bad to happen to you or your family. He's the same guy that 3 weeks before October 7 went to the Qataris and asked them, begged them for money to finance Hamas. So when it's convenient, they want to finance Hamas. When it's convenient, it's good to arm ISIS, as Israel is doing now. But all of this should not be discussed or criticized in the news. You and I will get crushed and fired and accused of all kinds of lies and smear campaigns because we're telling Americans the truth. What's happening now is a war on the truth and a war on information. And part of that war is killing Palestinian journalists in Palestine, but also threatening anyone with financial, sanctions if we dare to give any of those institutions that were built post-World War II, cooperate with them so we could seek justice peacefully. And this opened the door only to one thing. If you continue to crush peaceful resolutions and peaceful attempts to seek justice, you will be ending up with more terrorism and more radicalization. And this is not what Netanyahu is wanting and pushing for, because then he can say, you see, it's a clash of civilization. These people are barbarians, and we are fighting on your behalf. This is exactly his vision and his views. And what's happening in news media, and you actually should talk about it more than anybody else, Joy, and I hope you would write a book about it, because you understand the internal pressure of these lobbyists, of those organizations who pretend to be caring about anti-Semitism, with all they care about is crushing any criticism of Israel, bullying, intimidation, smear campaigns, firing, harassing, and now they're bribing Barry Weiss and buying her off so she can become the major propagandist and take over CBS. They're killing CBS. Nobody will be watching this garbage.
It is a strange, strange world we live in. And Rula Jebreal is one of our most valuable voices. Keep speaking truth. Please keep us up to date, because this situation in Qatar strikes me as incredibly, incredibly dangerous. And thank you for reminding us that Tunisia is also being attacked. Rula Jebreal, thank you, my sister. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joy. And I hope one day to see you back on national television, because you are a hero for many of us. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much. And these are the questions that we need to ask: is why is it this full scale allowance of another country that we effectively fund? We're funding their healthcare, we're funding their society, we're funding their military operations, and they are attacking at this point any country they want with impunity. And the Trump administration is doing absolutely nothing, saying absolutely nothing, and letting them do it. But by the way, we're also attacking random ships in the Caribbean, so I guess we're doing it too. What a strange world. Thank you all for tuning in. I want to thank the Freedom from Religion Foundation, our sponsor for this program, Don Fugelsang. Please get his book. Let me put it up again. It's called Separation of Church and Hate. We'll put it back up on the screen as well. It's a really, really good book. Funny, poignant, and the subhead of it is A Sane Person's Guide to Taking Back the Bible from Fundamentalists, Fascists, and Flock Fleecing Frauds. Lots of F's in there. Very good. Also, Rula Jebreal, thank you very much, and Congressman Ro Khanna. That's it for now. Thank you all for watching. Please be sure to hit like and subscribe. Also, hit that share button. Hit the little notification thing as well, because that will mean that when we go live, you will know that we're live. A few announcements on Friday. We are going to be running our exclusive interview with New York Attorney General Letitia James. You don't want to miss it. I asked her about the case that the regime is trying to make against her and Lisa Cook, claiming mortgage fraud, and also all the other Black women that Donald Trump is targeting. Also about those ICE raids in New York that have now also apparently hit Chicago and other places around the country. So we talked about that. Lots more really great interviews coming up. We've sat down with a lot of people, including about the Epstein Files and about all of the things. So all of that content is coming up. So to make sure that you don't miss it, be sure to hit subscribe so that you are in the fam. Thank you all very much to everybody on Spotify, everybody on Substack, everybody on the YouTubes, anywhere that you're listening. We appreciate you. We love you. And we will see you on the next The Joy Reid Show. Take care.